It looks like the government of Mississippi wants to continue fucking over its citizens on the issue of health care. There is a legislative session approaching for Mississippi, and the issue of Medicaid expansion is coming up, but it looks unlikely that Medicaid will be expanded in Mississippi. Now, the Republicans and everybody who's against it, including this article from Y'all Politics, does the typical hand-wringing that we're used to from people against the Medicaid expansion. They say, oh, throwing more money at the problem isn't going to help. We need to shrink the size of government, free market, all of that nonsense that doesn't help anybody. The legislators that the argument quotes say that by opposing Medicaid expansion in the state, they will be protecting the citizens of Mississippi from undue tax burden. Now, let me tell you some of the burdens that people who live in Mississippi face that these legislators are not willing to deal with. So Mississippi ranks dead last in the United States for life expectancy, 71.8 years. That's a full 7 years below the average life expectancy in the country. 14% of people between the ages 18 and 64 are currently uninsured. That's 1 out of every, 9 people in that age group is uninsured, and 37% of people in that age group have past due medical debt. And that's just past due medical debt. No telling what the number is when you include people who are currently in medical debt that can actually, afford to pay it or barely afford to pay their medical debt. So a third of people in that age group in the state over a third, are being burdened with past due medical debt. And Mississippi, as we know, is one of the poorest states in the country. Many people who live in Mississippi live in rural areas. 31 of 64 rural Mississippi hospitals, as recently as last year, are at risk of closing. That's nearly 50% of hospitals in rural areas in the state that could be closed from financial issues, yet the state refuses to expand Medicaid because it might cost money, and if you're a corrupt politician in a state government, the last thing you want is to be spending money on the people of your state and actively helping them. So that's what's going on there in Mississippi. The question is, what do you do? Well, obviously, the best solution to this problem would be universal, single-payer, Medicare for all, free at the point of service to every single person in the country. Now, from a state perspective, though, you can't really do that. So if you are in Mississippi, you got to fight to get that expansion through. We're at a point now where the buy-in to expand Medicaid has gone up from 5% of the cost to 10% of the cost for states, which, is really bad, and that just serves as a way to disincentivize states from expanding. But, even without that, even factoring in that there's a 10% cost on the state, there's a health crisis in the state of Mississippi. They need to expand Medicaid. If you're somebody in Mississippi, you got to fight for that. You got to make sure that your family knows, because based on those statistics earlier, odds are you're living with medical debt, or people that are living with medical debt, or you're living uninsured, or people that are uninsured. And if you can tell from the difference, 14% are uninsured, but 37% have past due medical debt. The health insurance, the private health insurance in that state ain't getting it done. It's shitty insurance. You got to stand up. You got to get your legislators to vote to expand Medicaid.